The characters know the galaxy is cruel, survival is rare, victory is costly. The void above the death world of Chiaroscuro was silent, a vast canvas of black streaked with the distant, feverish glow of the cicatrix maledictum. Then it rippled. Not with the fiery tear of a warp translation, but with a shimmering, impossible distortion of real space itself. From this wound in physics fell a shape, tumbling end over end, wreathed in a corona of strange amber energy and the dying echoes of a thunderous, defiant roar. It was a crude, jagged meteor of stone and petrified wood, a flying mountain cast adrift between realities. It screamed through the high atmosphere, a second, defiant moon breaking apart in a torrent of flame and debris, and smashed into the equatorial jungles of the secondary continent with the force of an orbital strike. The impact quake flattened 1,000 square miles of primordial carnivorous flora. A fungal ash cloud, lit from within by crawling veins of emerald warp lightning, bloomed into the stratosphere. In the heart of the newly formed crater, a mountain of smoking rock and twisted, iron-hard roots settled. And deep within it, something immense, primal, and unbelievably angry began to stir. On the bridge of the Ordo Xenos black ship Solitarius, orbiting high above, Inquisitor Kalen Mordecai of the Ordo Xenos watched the sensorium feeds. His face, a pale mask of grim intensity beneath a shock of white hair, betrayed a profound unease. Bioscanners were going insane. Life sign, enormous, warm-blooded, terrestrial. But its psychic signature? It was a null, a violent null. Not the passive silence of a pariah, but a roaring, anti-psychic void that seemed to push against the Imperium itself. Around him, astropaths clutched their heads and whimpered. A new form of tyrannid bio-titan? Suggested his interrogator, Lysandra, her hand on the grip of her bolt pistol. No, Mordecai breathed, studying the magnified visual, a colossal furred limb, black as volcanic glass, shifting amidst the rubble. Something older, something literal. A myth-given flesh cast into our nightmare. The Emperor provides a test, or a weapon. We shall ascertain which. But Chiaroscuro was not uninhabited. The primary continent was a hellscape of trench warfare between the Imperium of Man, the L-114th Cadian Ghost Regiment holding the hive city of Oblivion's Edge, and the relentless fungus-ridden tide of the Orc Waw of Warboss Gutstumpa. The secondary continent, a supposed no-man's land of lethal megafauna and psychotoxic flora, had just become the most valuable piece of real estate in the system. For the Orcs, the colossal impact was the best thing they'd ever seen. For the Imperium, it was an apocalyptic omen. And from the warp, drawn by the sudden screaming silence in the psychic choir of the world, other eyes turned, hungry and curious. Pain was the first thing. A deep, bone-grinding ache in his chest where the strange winged reptile thing from the shimmering hole in the sky had torn at him. Then came the smell, not the salt spray and lush greenery of Skull Island, but a choking, acidic reek of rot, chemicals, and ozone. Kong pushed himself up from the tomb of stone, shedding megatons of debris. He stood in a crater of his own making, under a bruised purple sky. 2 sickly moons glared down. The jungle around him was wrong. Trees pulsed with faint bioluminescence. Vines snapped like whips, seeking flesh. Giant spore-releasing caps exploded in silent clouds. And the sounds? Not the familiar chorus of birds and insects, but the distant rhythmic boom, boom, boom of thunder that was not thunder, and the chattering guttural screams of things that did not sound like any ape or lizard. He was a king without a kingdom, a god without worshippers. A deep, resonant loneliness, sharper than any physical pain, tightened in his chest. He beat his fists against the earth. Thum, 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 a challenge and a proclamation. I am here. The response was immediate. From the toxic canopy, a pack of giant chaos spawn, once native predators twisted by leaking warp energy, descended. They were masses of tentacles, fangs, and mismatched eyes, dripping with psychic filth. They moved with unnatural jerking speed. Kong's first battle in the 41st Millennium was a storm of primal fury against demonic plasticity. He seized the lead spawn, its psychic screeching dying in its throat as his immense hands crushed its unstable matter into pulp. Another latched onto his back, acid-seeping tentacles burning his fur. With a roar of pain and rage, he grabbed a petrified tree trunk and swung it like the god's own club, battering the creatures into pulpy, dissipating stains. Their warp-tathed essence sizzled against his anti-psychic aura, causing them to unravel before they could truly corrupt. He stood panting, the strange non-rain sizzling on his scorched fur. This world was hostile. It would all be hostile. His journey began, a solitary titan moving with surprising ground-eating grace through the alien jungle. He encountered and slew a carnifex separated from its hive fleet, breaking its scything talons and using its own biomorph to impale it. He drank from a river that steamed with radioactivity, his robust biology burning the poison away. And he saw the skies. He saw metallic beetles screaming overhead, trailing fire and smoke, fighting each other. He saw great lumbering, noisy walkers the size of small mountains on the far continent, belching smoke. And at night, when the warp light danced, he saw fleeting, insubstantial shapes that whispered madness, which his mind simply rejected. Kong was a bastion of the physical. In a universe drowning in psychic energy and demonic will, his utter, profound realness was an anomaly. He was a rock in the psychic tide, and the tide was beginning to notice the obstruction. Warboss Gutstompa's single-minded goal of crumping the Humis in their metal box city was forgotten the second his weird boy, Zogwart, started foaming at the gab. Zogwart's eyes were rolled back, green lightning crackling between his teeth. "Big one! The biggest! From the sky! He fights like a squigoth with hands! He makes the Wa field shout with quiet! We gotta have it!" To an orc, there was no higher calling than finding the biggest, toughest fight imaginable. A living god-beast from the stars? It was a gift. Gutstampa, a mountain of muscle and crude iron, bellowed with laughter that shook his truck. "Right, we go find the fisty Gork, or maybe Mork. We bring him to the Humis for a proper scrap." A massive orc armada of rickety trucks, battle wagons, and death copters swarmed across the acidic sea, a rust-brown tide heading for Kong's continent. The Imperial High Command, detecting the orc redeployment, saw a fleeting advantage. Inquisitor Mordecai saw something else, a perfect field test. He descended via Thunderhawk with a kill team, La Sanzra, a squad of stoic Deathwatch Space Marines, Brother Sergeant Corvus of the Raven Guard, Brother Kargan of the Space Wolves, a hulking Ironhand named Brother Grund, and a sharp-eyed Vindicare assassin, Silas. Their orders: observe, contain, if possible, extract biological samples, if necessary, exterminate. They made landfall as Kong, driven by a deep territorial instinct, reached the north coast, facing the primary continent. He saw the approaching orc fleet, heard their roaring chants and the daka 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 of guns fired in jubilation. He did not understand their language, but he understood the intent: challenge. The orcs hit the beaches with glorious abandon. Battle wagons fired shells the size of ground cars. Death dreads stomped forward. Hundreds of boys charged, choppers raised. Kong met them at the tree line. He did not know tactics. He knew only dominance. He ripped a giant phosphorescent fungus from the ground and hurled it like a discus. It smashed into a battle wagon, detonating its fuel and ammunition in a spectacular green fireball. Orcs cheered, thinking this was a brilliant opening move. Then he was among them. It was not a battle, it was a demolition. Kong's fists were pile drivers, crushing dreads into scrap metal. He grabbed a kilocan, using it as a flail to clear a swath of boys. Rockets and heavy stubber rounds peppered his hide, drawing pinpricks of blood, enraging him further. He stomped, creating craters filled with green paste. His roar drowned out the wah. The orcs loved it. They died in ecstasy. From a hidden ridge, the Imperial kill team watched in stunned silence. The Vindicator, Silas, had his Exitus rifle trained. The characters know the galaxy is cruel, survival is rare, victory is costly. Had his Exodus rifle trained on Kong's temple. I have a shot, Inquisitor. High-grade penetrator round to the ocular orbit. Hold, Mordecai whispered, his data slate recording everything. Watch its aura. The orc weird boy. Zogwart had been building power. He unleashed a torrent of Wah energy, a crackling green fist of pure psychic might meant to crush Kong's mind. The effect was catastrophic for Zogwart. The psychic energy struck Kong's anti-psychic field and shattered. The feedback loop exploded the weird boy's head like an overripe melon and sent psychic shockwaves through the orc mob. The Wah field, that collective psychic belief that made orc tech work and fueled their fury, stuttered. For a crucial few seconds, orc shooters jammed, engines sputtered. The boys felt a sudden, unfamiliar pang of doubt. Kong, sensing the shift, seized the moment. He roared, a sound of such pure physical dominance that it made the very air vibrate. He charged the war boss's personal gargantuan squig off. The two titans collided. It was a contest of pure strength versus chaotic, toothy brutality. Kong locked his arms around the Squigoth's neck, muscles coiling like continental plates, and with a final, wrenching heave, snapped its spine. Gutstompa, seeing his best beast fall, bellowed in rage and charged himself. The warboss was a monster by orc standards, but next to Kong he was a child. Kong grabbed him, lifted him high, Gutstompa chopping futilely at his fingers, and brought him down across his raised knee. The sickening crack of the warboss's spine ending echoed across the suddenly silent battlefield. The orc spirit broke. The survivors fled to their boats, not with laughter, but with a new, superstitious fear. They had found something even the Wah couldn't beat. Mordecai lowered his magnoculars. "It is a weapon," he said, a fanatical light in his eyes, a psychic null of immense physical power. The Emperor has delivered us a key. Imagine it, unleashed on a daemon world, or a tyrannid synaptic nexus. It must be captured, for the Imperium. Kong, standing amidst the wreckage and gore, bloodied and breathing heavily, looked out across the sea towards the Hive City, its spires glowing in the perpetual twilight. He saw more metal, more noise, more challenge. A deep, territorial fire burned in his chest. This was his island now, and he would defend it. The slaughter of the orcs was a dinner bell rung in the deep warp. The hive mind, a consciousness spanning galaxies, noted the sudden shrieking silence of a weird boy's death and the unique null signature that caused it. Here was a potential threat to the synaptic network, a biological weapon of immense power. It must be studied, absorbed, and its genetic template added to the hive. A tyrannid Horadin detached from the main fleet lurking in the system's Ort cloud. It descended, carrying a specialized kill team, a tyrant guard, raveners, and a new sinister bioform, a neurothrope designed not just to emit synaptic pulses, but to physically puncture psychic defenses. The Death Watch reacted with disciplined fury. Bolt shells and crack grenades flashed. Brother Grunt's heavy bolter chewed through raveners. Brother Kargan howled as his frost axe cleaved through limbs. But the Tyrant Guard was unstoppable, a living battering ram heading straight for Kong. Kong saw the Harridan as the greatest threat. He scaled the mountain with terrifying speed, avoiding the Neurothrope's psychic lances. At the summit, he tore a massive pillar of rock free, and, with the colossal strength that could topple skyscrapers, hurled it like a javelin. It struck the Harridan's wing joint, shearing through biomatter and membrane. The creature screamed, spiraling out of control to crash into the jungle below, its death throes leveling miles of forest. Enraged, Kong leapt down onto the Tyrant Guard. It was the hardest fight of his life. The creature was nearly his match in strength and encased in living armor. They grappled, shaking the earth. Kong's fists hammered its carapace, cracking it. The guard's claws dug deep furrows in his chest, roaring in each other's faces. It was a primal duel of alpha predators. Silius, the Vindicator, saw his moment. Not to kill Kong, but to save him for the Inquisition. His shot was perfect. A high X round struck the Neurothrope as it prepared a finishing psychic blow against the distracted Kong. The creature exploded in a shower of gore and psychic feedback. The synaptic link to the remaining creatures severed. They became confused, animalistic. Kong, sensing the guard falter for a split second, seized its head in his massive hands and, with one final Herculean twist, ripped it from its body. He stood, holding the dripping trophy, chest heaving, blood pouring from his wounds. He looked at the Death Watch, at the Inquisitor's small figures among the rocks. He saw them, not as allies, but as more invaders. Different from the green ones, but invaders nonetheless. He threw back his head and let out a roar of victory, pain, and warning that echoed across the continent. It was a king's decree. This is mine. Mordecai, covered in tyrannid ichor, smiled coldly. Adaptable, resilient. It has defeated 2 major Exynos threats. The data is conclusive. We return to the Solitarius. It is time to bring in the specialist containment teams. We will take it alive. The Solitarius' strategy was one of brutal, imperial efficiency. They would not fight Kong directly. They would force his compliance. Stage 1. Biostrategic saturation. From low orbit, the Black Ship unleashed virus bombs of a non-lethal neuroinhibitory strain into the continent's ecosystem. The intent was not to kill, but to tranquilize. The jungles began to die. The megafauna Kong had instinctively seen as part of his territory fell into comas or died in agony. The rivers turned to milky poison. Stage 2. Kinetic persuasion. Storm-Talon gunships and Thunderhawks began a relentless campaign of harassment. They did not aim to kill Kong, but to wound, to exhaust, to herd him towards the coast, where a massive, fortress-class containment arc waited, its doors open like a giant steel maw. He was being driven from his home, inch by agonizing inch. He was poisoned, bleeding from 1,000 small wounds, deafened by the constant thunder of engines. He fought back, bringing down several aircraft with thrown boulders and sheer leaping grabs, but for every one he destroyed, 2 more took its place. His roars became ragged, laced with a frustration that bordered on despair. This was not a fight he could win with his fists. The sky itself was his enemy. It was Lysandra, the interrogator, who began to doubt. She watched through picked feeds as Kong, in a moment of shocking tenderness, tried to lift a fallen giant reptilian herbivore felled by the virus, as if to help it. She saw him look at the dying jungle with what could only be interpreted as grief. He was not a mindless beast. He was a guardian, and they were torturing him. Inquisitor, she argued in the strategy chamber. We are breaking it. Its value as a weapon is meaningless if its spirit is shattered. There must be another way. Sentiment, interrogator? Mordecai's voice was ice. It is a Xenos beast, a tool. We are smelting it, forging it for the Emperor's hand. Its spirit is irrelevant. Only its function matters. But the Imperial's brutal calculus had an unintended consequence. Kong's pain, his rage, his profound, earth-shaking loneliness. It was a beacon in a different kind of sea. The warp stirred. The violent suppression of the warp around Kong had created a kind of pressure differential, and where there is pressure, demons will find a way to erupt. As the containment forces drove Kong to the coastal plains, the very fabric of reality began to weep. The neurotoxin had killed not just animals, but the primitive microbial life that helped bind reality to the planet's weak psychic field. In the psychic vacuum left by Kong's presence and the ecological death, a tear formed. It started as a shimmer in the air, like heat haze. Then came the smell of blood and brass. The ground softened, turning to bubbling flesh mud. From the tear emerged a bloodthirster, Ka, the eightfold scourge. But it was not here for the Inquisition. The greater daemon of Khorne cared nothing for their schemes. It was here for him. Khorne, the blood god, had watched the primal, physical violence of Kong, the crushing of orcs, the ripping apart of tyrannids. It was violence in its purest, most unadulterated form. No psychic trickery, no sorcery, just raw, brutal strength. Khorne craved it. He would have this mighty beast's skull for his throne, or he would have its soul twisted into a new, unparalleled demon prince of sheer mindless carnage. Ka was a mountain of muscle, brass, and hatred, wielding a massive axe that smoked with soul fire. It beat its wings, and a hurricane of blood and ash swept across the plain. It pointed its axe at the weary, bleeding Kong, and bellowed a challenge that shook the souls of every human present. "Beast, your rage pleases the Skull Throne. Now offer it to me in final, glorious slaughter. Become the instrument of endless war, or become my stepping stone to greater favor." Kong turned. He saw a creature of nightmare, a thing of magic and madness given form. It was the antithesis of everything he was. Its very existence was an insult to the physical world. His exhaustion fell away, burned up in a new, white-hot fury. This was the source, the heart of the poison in his world. He beat his own chest, not in challenge this time, but in a declaration of war against unreality itself. His answering roar was a sonic boom of defiance. The Imperial forces were caught in the middle. Mordecai stared, his plans in ruins. A greater daemon? The beast draws the ruinous powers like a magnet. This changes everything. Lysandra drew her chainsword. "It changes nothing, Inquisitor. That thing will kill Kong and then turn on us. The entire continent will fall. We must help him." Help a Xenos? Against a servant of chaos? Mordecai's face was a war of dogma and pragmatism. On the plain, the two titans charged. It was a clash of cosmologies. The bloodthirster, a being of symbolic, psychic fury, its strength fueled by the faith of 1,000,000 murderous cults. And Kong, a being of absolute tangible flesh and bone, his strength born of evolutionary struggle against a dead world's gravity. Karanka's axe swung, shearing through the air with demonic energy. Kong dodged, the shockwave of the mist carving a trench in the ground. Kong retaliated, a fist with a meteoric impact, hammering into the demon's brass-plated chest. The sound was a cathedral bell being struck by a mountain. The bloodthirster staggered, surprised by the sheer, real force of the blow. Its demonic essence recoiled from Kong's null aura. The wounds Kong inflicted didn't just hurt, they threatened unmaking. But the demon was relentless. It took to the air, summoning whips of flaming blood to lash at Kong. It called upon its axe to unleash waves of killing energy. Kong grabbed the wreckage of an Imperial tank and used it as a shield, the metal melting and boiling under the demonic assault. He was being pushed back, toward the sea, toward the waiting containment arc. The Death Watch, acting on Lysandra's desperate plea and seeing the immediate threat, opened fire on the bloodthirster. Bolt rounds and plasma bursts peppered its hide, distracting it. Karanka turned its wrath on them, bisecting two scions with a casual sweep of its axe. Seeing his allies attacked, something shifted in Kong's ancient mind. A memory, perhaps, of defending smaller two-legged creatures on his island long ago. A memory of a tiny, brave figure with blonde hair who looked at him not with fear, but with understanding. With understanding. With a roar, he lunged, placing himself between the demon and the humans. He grabbed the bloodthirster's wing as it dove for the kill team, dragging it from the sky. They hit the ground in a cataclysmic tangle. Kong was on top now, his fists rising and falling like piston-driven wrecking balls. Thud. Crack. Thud. Each blow landed with the force of an artillery shell, not just bruising, but disrupting the demon's form. Brass armor cracked, muscles of solidified rage dissolved under the assault of pure atheistic physics. Karancia screamed, not in pain, but in fury. It plunged its axe deep into Kong's shoulder. Kong roared in agony, the demonic fire searing his flesh in a way no physical weapon ever could. He grabbed the axe's haft, his own blood sizzling on the metal, and bent it. With a final gut-wrenching pull, he tore the weapon from the demon's grip and hurled it into the sea. Weaponless, its form flickering, the bloodthirster resorted to its most primal attack. It locked its jaws onto Kong's forearm. Kong responded in kind. He locked his own, far larger jaws onto the demon's neck. It was a grotesque test of will. The demon's bite burned with spiritual corrosion. Kong's bite was simple, colossal pressure. He braced his feet, every muscle in his back and neck corded with impossible strain. The demon thrashed, its hellfire breath scorching Kong's face. With a sound that was part roar, part scream, and part the tearing of reality itself, Kong wrenched his head sideways. Karancia's neck snapped, not just physically, but conceptually. The demon's form destabilized, its psychic energy unraveling in a violent, silent explosion of black and crimson light. It let out one final, fading bellow of disbelief and was sucked back into the warp, discorporated. Kong stood alone on the ravaged plain, holding the dissipating essence of a god of murder in his teeth for a moment before it vanished. He was a ruin. His fur was matted with his own blood and ichor. The axe wound in his shoulder smoked with residual warp fire. He was swaying, his breathing a ragged, thunderous gasp. He looked at the Inquisitor's forces. He looked at the open maw of the containment arc. He looked at the dying land behind him. Then he turned his back on them all. With the last of his strength, he began the long, limping walk back into the heart of his poisoned, dying kingdom. He would die on his feet, in his home, not in a cage. Mordecai raised his hand, stopping the kill team from pursuing. He watched the retreating titanic figure, a colossus painted in shades of blood and ash against the hellish sky. "Report to the Solitarius," he said. "The asset, the beast, is too dangerous to capture. It is a catalyst for demonic incursion on a scale we cannot risk. And it is dying. The containment operation is terminated. We will withdraw to high orbit and await further orders." Lysandra watched Kong disappear into the toxic haze, her heart a stone in her chest. He had saved them, and they had destroyed everything he had for nothing. She saw not a weapon, not a beast. She saw a king, betrayed by stars he never wished to know, defending a throne of ashes until the very end. The Anni Solitarius hung in the void, a silent vulture. Scans showed Kong's life signs fading, but stubborn. He had reached his mountain. He sat at its peak, a dark silhouette against the glowing, wounded sky, looking out over the dead continent. Inquisitor Mordecai drafted his report to the Ordo Xenos. He classified the entity as Kong-type null beast, designate Monarchus Ultimus. He recommended extreme caution, citing its ability to attract and combat extreme Xenos and demonic threats, but also its catastrophic potential as a demonic beacon. The file was marked Purgatus at Marginum, awaiting purgation at the edge of space. Lysandra did not sign the report. That night, in the ship's silent archives, she accessed a different, older database. She cross-referenced ancient, pre-imperial terrestrial records, myths of old Earth. She found faded, fragmented tales, the eighth wonder of the world, the king of Skull Island. Beauty killed the beast. She looked at the final picked image of Kong, alone on his mountain. She did not see a weapon. She saw the last of his kind. A relic of a universe that valued simple things, territory, survival, a silent bond with a world. He was an island of reality in a sea of madness, and they had drowned his island in poison. She made a private, heretical entry in her personal log. We came to a world with a god, and we found it wanting. We tried to break it to our will, and in doing so we unleashed a greater evil it alone could face. It fought for its home, and in the end it saved its destroyers. What does that make us? The monsters in this story are not all covered in fur. On the planet below, under the sickly light of alien moons, the king sat on his throne of stone. The neurotoxin burned in his veins, the demon's fire smoldered in his wound. He was tired, so very tired. He looked up at the stars, not with understanding, but with a final weary defiance. A low rumble built in his chest, not a roar of challenge, but a deep, mournful sigh that stirred the ash at the mountain's base. It was the sound of a world ending. Then he laid his great head upon his arms, his gaze fixed on the horizon of his dead kingdom. The last giant in a galaxy of endless screaming war, waiting for the only peace this cruel new universe would allow him, the quiet embrace of oblivion. But in the warp, new and hungrier